So we're here to talk about the latest update to mySQMPlus, and this is quite a significant upgrade. We've upgraded the PDF document, we've updated the protocol because some more firmware calls have changed, what been added. The firmware is completely updated, as well as all the data pages or web pages. Windows app, there's a new one, there's a new log viewer app, and a new Linux app to go with all of this. So it's going to be released all at the same time, and none of this is actually applicable now to version 1.2.3 or lower. So please don't try to use the new apps with older versions. It's just not going to work. Alright, so some changes that might affect you, and these were in the controller config file, and some things have changed here. So this one in section 2 options, it's now called emulate SQM meter, and the other option that was available at the time, just trying to remember where I am, I think it was show start screen, that's gone because we use simple boot up messages. The configuration of static IP addresses is gone from GPS, it's now in the file system. Previously you used something like rain bucket external or something, it's now called external rainfall. So if you're using an external rain bucket, use this instead. Not much else has changed, I don't think, in all of these. No, it all looks pretty good. Let's go back and start going through some of this. Some things have been renamed, as I said. JSON support on the Admin2 home page. So let's go to admin page 2. It says here, and while we're here, I can also tell you that the GPS format for switching between decimal and degree, minutes, seconds is now gone. We just standardise on degree, minutes, seconds now. Homepage format, it is currently being shown in HTML. So if I have a look, yep, it's HTML. Just prove it. And if I turn it on to JSON, it's now being shown in JSON. It's in the, whatever is in the square brackets indicates the current setting. And I do refresh. Oh, yep, it's all changed. See that? So let me just send it back to HTML. So that's one. There's a couple of changes there. There's been some changes to key names and JSON messages. So if I do, for example, /rd as a call, and it returns with JSON elements, these key value pairs. This used to be called hour, H-O-U-R. Used to be called IR ambient. It's now sky ambient. Used to be called wind speed with SPEED. It's now changed to SPD. And all those names, this is where I am. This is what's listed. They all work with each other now, including the new log viewer app. So, and I've listed what calls have actually changed. So if you're using some of these on a Raspberry Pi or whatever, you need to check to make sure that you're now using the correct names and not the old names. Alright, my PubSubClient. We used to have a file called, of course, myPubSub. But it's now been changed. Yes? So you have to use the original. You can download it from GitHub and install it, and the myPubSub, get rid of it. The reason why we had it in the first place is because the official version didn't support what we wanted to do, but that's now been put in there, so everything's A-OK. task timer. Okay, so if I have a look in something like, yeah, this will do. If I have a look at publish to breaker, is it? No. That's probably not a good one to actually demonstrate because the way in which it runs has been completely changed. So let me choose this one for explaining it all. Inside here, where it said update OLED text display, it used to have used to get milliseconds into a value and then compare it against something and then decide whether to run. But everything's changed now. So if I show you the main code, okay. So let's just start with this. If you've got a MLX sensor, this used to have counters and we used to check counting states, etc. Now everything works with flags and says, oh, if I just go back, right, so this is the setup code. And if you don't find it, this flag is set to 1, meaning it will never be updated. If the sensor is actually found, you see the flag is set to 0. So let me now go back to the main loop. This is the main loop, and it says if the flag is 1. Well, we know we set it to 0, so how the hell does it get set to 1 and we're in the main loop? And so that's a very good question. If it is 1, we set it to 0. And then we wait for it to become 1 again. When it's 1, we actually update the sensor. And this applies to basically just about everything now. So if the flag indicator for that device or sensor is a 1, we set the indicator to 0, we update it, and we then loop back and we wait for this to suddenly become 1 again. So I know you're going to ask, how does it get to 1? So let's have a look at my task timer.h. So this is completely new code that's gone in, and what we use is a hardware interrupt timer. We don't rely upon milliseconds anymore. The problem with milliseconds is things can get out of sync, and then you get a whole lot of updates all occurring at the same time, and that really impacts on performance. So I've implemented a 100 millisecond timer, and we have now counts for each of the sensors. So for example, if we want to refresh Lux, or now I'm in SQM, we use this counter as a maximum value. So it waits until there have been 100 milliseconds passed, or 3.2 milliseconds, and then we can then the time's going to, when this count is reached, it starts counting whenever the value, the flag, goes to 0. So whenever this flag, which is done in setup, goes to 0, this task timer starts counting, and when it reaches that maximum count for that value, it sets the flag to 1. So that's basically the long and short of it all, and so that's been implemented for all the services, including MQTT, NTP, Weather Underground, you name it. And all of these are designed so that they don't try and collide all at once. And we know that because we've got 100 milliseconds resolution on this. So anyway, so here it is here, and then we come in here, and if we've got MQTT enabled, and if the flag is not set to -1, remember, we didn't find it, we set it to -1. If it's found and we want it to work, we set it to 0. So it's 0. So we add 100 milliseconds to it. If that count hasn't reached the maximum count, then we do nothing. We just keep going every 100 milliseconds. Finally, when the count reaches max count, we set the flag to 1, which means back in the main loop that MQTT code actually starts running, and then we set the counter back to -1 so we can repeat the whole process again. Don't confuse the MQTT check with this check flag. Two completely separate variables. The counter flag set and the counter value counts the number of 100 milliseconds that have elapsed. So that's that new stuff that's gone in. So that's a task timer. Some JSON responses have changed, and I illustrated with that with the rd command. MQTT server and web server now have been changed to support JSON. So I've got it in. No, that's not it. Let me run an MQTT here. And let me connect to the broker. Let me subscribe to whatever the controller is publishing to. And if I have a look at, let's drop that down a bit, admin page 6, it's telling me that it's running, that it's connected. The publish interval is 30, and I can change that on this web page. It's where it appears now. And if I go and have a look at MQTT, once the 30 seconds has elapsed, I should expect a particular message arrive. Now, the thing is that all the entire service now is run through this task timer. So when it finds that it self-disconnects for whatever reason, or the broker is unavailable, it will actually retry every 60 seconds. And you don't have to worry about anything. That will just happens by itself now. So here we've got a message, and you notice this is not the entire message. Hang on a minute. MQTT is meant to log a whole lot of stuff. Well, yes and no. Here we are. New page, admin 7. Notice we got 8, 9, 10, 11, admin 7. Oh, what's this? It says SQM is enabled. The state ambience enabled, humidity is enabled, pressure is enabled, dew point's enabled. Oh, let's go back and have a look. Oh, pressure's enabled, and dew point, and humidity, and ambient. Yeah, that seems to be right, Robert. So what happens if I go disable all and then enable all? Well, I could have just chosen enable all. So I've enabled them all now. So on the next publish message, we would expect that the MQTT will actually deliver all of these values to the broker. So here's the broker. That's the first message, that's the second. So we would expect soon that when that comes through, we would be able to see them. So remember, we got Admin8, and Admin8 is the real-time clock. Admin9 is web page colors. Admin10, we didn't have that before. Admin10, let's go to Admin10. So it's configure web home page. What? Say what? Let's go back and have a look. And currently it says enabled, 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 enabled. Remember the current state is shown in the square brackets. Oh, okay, so let's just disable all. We'll enable SQM and humidity and cloud cover and some sky stuff. Okay, so they're enabled, their states are enabled. Okay, let's go back here to the home page. What happens if we refresh? All those values that we checked as being enabled are now on the home page being displayed. So I've cut down the amount of screen real estate. You can only, if you only need to look at certain ones, you can look at those. And don't forget also that in admin page 2, we can switch the home page format to JSON, and let's do a reload, and oh, there it is in JSON. So we've now got a fair amount of support in terms of configuring things. Okay, so finally remember that I went to MQTT and I configured it to only send certain values, and then I said, well, let's enable them all and we'll come back and have a look. And so here we go. These two messages have arrived since I've been talking away, and now you see everything's actually displayed inside that particular message. All the values, because I selected them all. Right, so what else have we got to cover? Oh yeah, if you're using user MQTT code in the firmware, I think one or two of you were. Can I just pick it up? There. Because we no longer have these values in the config file because I've removed them, you have to decide which format you want the user MQTT. If you're using that, you have to specify the format now, and none of this has basically been changed. Maybe a few names have changed, but the basic functionality hasn't changed at all. And remember, you have that option in controller config when you select MQTT of using the code associated with that. So if you enable that, then it uses the user MQTT file. Controller config files. Let's go and have a look. Sorry, web browser. We no longer use the data underscore per.json file. So let me just list the files first. These are the files. Let's start with controller config. So this basically has got all the settings that were in data underscore per, etc. So all of those values are basically there. We've just now named it a different file. So that's the controller configuration. If I have a look at home page configuration, home page config, or home config, this is the configuration for displaying what's on the home page. So it's got its own HP for home page, HP ambient, etc. So they just, at the moment I'm showing ambient, object, sky object, SQM, cloud cover, humidity, because I set to 1. And the other file that we have is log config. So this applies to the MQTT settings. So that's where they're stored. They're stored in this file. So this file stores what's enabled in the MQTT Publish messages. The previous one was home page configuration, and then the other one is the controller config. There's been some changes to the web pages, and I talked about those. The publish interval being added, web 7 changed to web 10. Oh, and we've got a new web page 11. So let's go to web page 11. There it is there. And this displays system information. So it displays system, I don't know whether you want to know about this, but that's the Wi-Fi signal strength, only applicable in station mode, and I am running in station mode. So that's -48, the chip, etc. It also displays what sensors are enabled, what sensors aren't, what the bound, what services are running, etc. So that's that new page as well. And we had changes to the home page, which I've illustrated that. There's big changes to the Linux app. a big list of changes to the firmware. Windows apps changed, and I want to talk a little bit now about the log viewer. Right, so let's get cracking on the log viewer, which will be this. So this is the new log viewer program. So I had a complete sort of makeover, and I've got some log files here I've been capturing. So I've specified the folder here as to where the application actually is. So let me use the data log first, and I think this was produced by the new Windows app, and we've got big zoom in features, so you can capture a whole day's stuff plus be able to read it all, you see, display it on the graph. So look, I mean, it looks pretty much the same, but it's been improved, trust me. And so that's reading all these values as a JSON string. Because if I went into log viewer, log files, and I used the data log, you see that? It's all a JSON string. List of JSON values. So that's what I've loaded in. Now what I'll do is I'll go to the other log file, which is this one, and this one, notice it's got a short, it's only got selected values. So those selected values have now come in here, and I can sort of view them like this. If I go BME sensor, yes, we're monitoring sky temperature as well. Lux has gone, rain, wind, cloud percentage, all those other values aren't shown because they weren't in the log. So that works very well. The next thing we'll be doing is we'll be adding an MQTT client to log viewer, so you can subscribe to the broker and actually view the log messages coming from the controller in real time. So that's the plan for where the log viewer is going. Okay, and last but not least, that's it.